Welcome to the Occult Rejects. We are two former secret society members who were determined to show the public the truth that occultism has been purposely integrated into every aspect of society, from politics to music, Hollywood, and science. This is used to manipulate the public as a whole and to protect the fake elite. The symbols are used all around us to affect world events and public perception, our behavior, and even our future. We will translate the occult so that you have eyes to see. We reject their agenda to give you the tools to save yourself.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Occult Rejects with your hosts Lux
and the NY Patriot.
And tonight we have the special privilege of having on Jack Allen, a gentleman, a scholar, and the titan of tank tops.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was nice.
So he's been doing some really cool research lately about some things that kind of tie into what we've been researching about Skinwalker Ranch and these sort of like the roots of occultism. So everyone, welcome Jack Allen to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm honored to be here. I'm ashamed I was late and having technical issues, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll blame it on StreamYard.
Yeah.
It's not your
We'll blame it on whoever, dude. I don't know. Real quick. So once I had this guy on, this is nothing to do, but I had this guy on to talk plastics, and he was like an older guy, and I always like kind of go hard on boomers, and he couldn't hear me, and this was my old computer, and so I was like, this freaking idiot, like he's just old, like he's so old, but it wasn't him, it was me, and that's the same feelings that I'm having right now. So that's the last I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to bring it up anymore. Yeah, thank you for having me on, dude. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
So what have you been looking into lately, bud?
Yeah, dude. Well, so the Canaanites has been like my big, I guess we all look for this, right? Everyone in the, or maybe we aren't in the conspiracy world will say, well, who's they? Who's doing this? And that's like, and I always say, that's the question, right? Like, I don't know if there is a real answer, but I always look for who that is. And so the Eustace Mullins, he's like an OG, old author. He's probably long dead, but he wrote a few books. And the one was The Curse of Canaan. And so his theory is that this all stems back to biblical times with the Cain and Abel, and that was the spawn of Satan or what have you. And this bloodline and religion spread throughout the world, and it was in Babylon. It gets called out. Their leader gets beheaded, Nimrod. And
Nimrod.
Yes, and then his 14 pieces of his body. And so there's different theories on who killed him. But some people, Mullen says it's Shem, who is, Noah's one son. And that's who we all descend from, Shem. And so Shem beheads him, and he mails the 14 pieces to the various Babylonian priests that are doing orgies and sacrifices as a sign to say, if you continue this, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to do the same thing to you, which is so badass. But then they, instead of stopping, they just went underground, and that they held on to these pieces as relics. And supposedly that's like where the original mystery school started from, was these 14 pieces that, were at these temples that had to now go underground. And and then it just spreads, and they spread with the Babylonians. They become the Phoenicians, which dominated the purple trade. And that's how they had their power. Then they became, and the Phoenicians, Egyptian history talks about them, the seafaring people. They dominated trade, merchants. Then they became the Venetians, which dominated banking. They just were, would snip off the top of whatever came through them. Also dominated the purple trade. And then eventually that turns into like the black nobility and the bankers a lot of international bankers, our kids, their roommates, the Schiffs, they all came from Venice. And they just changed their names. So I thought that was really interesting as well, that so you could see this like progression of this sick religion just spreading through the world. That's my overview.
Dude, that's really good work too, because the stuff that we've been looking at lately, we're trying to get to the heart of it. Where did this religion start from? And it just goes back so far. A lot of people don't have kind of an idea as to how things from thousands of years ago tie into the belief system of people in control now. So it's really cool that you started to research that, because it bridges that timeline a lot. So
yeah. Well, dude, I also I'm just like back into Christianity because of all the evil stuff that these people do. And whether you're a Christian or not, clearly this other side, who we don't really have a name for, they believe in the Bible, but they take the opposite stance. And evidence for that is all around us. Everything that's talked about in Revelations, whether it's like, just all this degeneracy things that are being pushed as that's normal or that's what you should be doing. It's hard to not go back to the Bible and say, holy crap, like they talk, this was the warning, and this is the exact same thing that's going on now, so whether you're a Christian or not, the other side is definitely going by the book, no pun intended, but the opposite way, or the opposite goal.
Yeah, they're perverting it.
Right, exactly, dude. They're like using it as a game plan, but the opposite side of the game plan.
Yeah, exactly. And what kind of like prompted you to start that research? Was it like a book that you had found, or?
Yeah, dude, I start reading so many books and then I don't finish them. So I'm like, I can't talk about, because some of the authors, as you guys can imagine, go into areas that are not our opinions not allowed to have in normal days. So I bounce around a lot. And so I found Mullins, and that I'm weak in biblical knowledge. And that was really just what maybe, I found that I've heard of that term, the Canaanites and the curse of Canaan, talked about a lot in our little worlds. So I wanted to see what actually that was. So I had no idea Noah had like 3 sons. Like, dude, there's this whole theory that all of us, that we come from Adam and Eve. Then I don't know who's next, but regardless, Noah gets in there somehow, and he has these 3 sons: Shem, Japheth, and Cush. And Cush was Africa, Japheth was Asia, Shem was Europe, and so I found that fascinating. That's how and I don't know. I think that was like a relatively recent claim by biblical scholars that's how they explained how we have the different races. Because if we all came from, why we look different? And I think that was their explanation. So that's why I just was, just wanted to learn more about Canaan and biblical stuff.
Right. Because if you look at it, at least from the biblical stance, you have the sons are going to be Cain and Abel. And so it's sort of, there's this biblical mythology that Cain kills Abel, and I guess what more or less leads to these 2 separate branches or ideas about what God is or who he is. So that's fascinating to me, man.
Yeah, dude. And it's also crazy, like how all these like the opposite side, that Lucifer like worshiping or whatever, how that like permeates all these new age kind of stuff. Like the light bringer and rainbows and all this stuff is the free, like whether it's Freemasonic or the Canaanite symbolism, that's their symbolism. Like you guys would probably be better to answer that, but like how the rainbow is a symbol used in, I can't remember if it was Freemasonry or it was in something else, but that's because it's the light bringer, like Lucifer, and all this stuff goes back to worshiping Lucifer, which is just insane,
Yeah, I think sometimes, I think the rainbow's used in a lot of shit anyway. But I even think that kind of sometimes I wonder if it goes along with like that 7 rays. What is that, the 7 ray prayer? Was it you, Lux, who, I know you mentioned that to me before, right?
Yeah, I think the light bringer terminology is sort of an occult meaning to show different frequencies, or different light frequencies that we can't see, or using that to kind of symbolize this other being or religion that's using things outside of sort of our realm. But yeah, the rainbow is definitely used in occultism quite a bit.
Well, and also I don't, have you guys studied like this, because the Kabbalah and all these other ones that's came out of Babylon, like they have like this hierarchy of demons, and like it's almost like it reminds me of like the Marvel universe, like so they have like Azazel is like the
king, or there's Putin,
like there's all like Baal is like he's like the top prince he's Satan's top dude, Baal, and then they've got Asmodeus and Beelzebub and all these people. They're in charge of different, like it's just an insane. I don't know how. I guess from interacting with these like entities, that's how they came up with this hierarchy of demons. But it literally is like it reminds me of like the Marvel like X-Men, who's related to who's what powers they have. It's wild, dude. It's really like be an insane movie. I'm sure they've already like hinted at it in a movie, but yeah.
Oh yeah, who was in that movie Hereditary? That was Paimon was the main character, like the demon in that one, and he comes straight out of the Goetia too. Because the ones that you were mentioning, like with I was trying to look it up now. That is, I'm guessing you're kind of going by the Goetia a little bit, where they start putting them in like kings and princes and all that stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that would be the Goetia probably.
I've never heard that phrase. What's Goetia?
The Goetia, supposedly Solomon put 72 demons under his power, and you can, I would evoke them if you're even going to be bothered. You're supposed to evoke them, which is not bringing it into your area. You're supposed to be bringing it into a triangle and keeping it stuck there, and you kind of like can tell these things what to do or ask them for favors or blah, blah, blah.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, it's a pretty well-known actual thing in the ceremonial magic. I just never got into it. I never had a
from the occult perspective, that's what I was told as well, is that Solomon, when he was building Solomon's temple, he was not just using hands, and blocks from slaves or from other people who wanted to build the temple, but also using these demonic entities that he would command to do certain things, and he had power over them. So it's wild.
So it gets really interesting too. You got to have like the sigil of the dude. You got to all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah,
dude, I always loved, because you guys always have these. So what? NY, you said something about the triangle. What were you saying about the triangle?
You'd want to put, because these aren't things that you'd want to aspire. Well, for me, I wouldn't want to aspire to being like that, so I would never want it in my own circle. So you have your own circle that you have, and then you're going to, instead of invoke, you evoke, and you're going to put it like in a triangle that you have set up with all these symbols and stuff in there. Basically, it's supposed to get stuck in there, and I think you invoke angels at first, I think, too, to like pretty much like keep it stuck there. And you're supposed to conversate with it or whatever, or meditate or whatever.
Because the one, like the delta is like, I guess, the symbol of obscene rights. That's what Mullen said. Mm-hmm. And so like the pornography collection at the Library of Congress that they actually have, our tax dollars save pornography. Thank God for that. But it's called the Delta Collection. And then like all I know triangle is a very common shape. There's only so many shapes, but that was, you see these are, the logos of things of often be these like delta or triad or triangle shapes. And so Mullins ties that to these obscene rites in Babylon.
Right. And if you look at the Solomon stuff, like New York Patriot was saying, it's more or less a way to cage a entity to do what you want, because you're taking power over this entity. So with these magical rites and rituals, you're bringing them into our dimension, but you're caging them to a certain limited duty or job. So, it's
insane.
And that's exactly where the Masons get their idea behind is, you hear Masons are the builders, right? That's what a Mason literally is. It's a builder. But if you look at Masonic history, the reason why they have that builder essence is because of the building of Solomon's temple.
Right. Dude, and that it's the Masonic law, like all these groups. That's why I think it even adds more credence, is because like they are basing this off hundreds of years of like the same worship. So it's just odd that it hasn't changed. Like I don't know how powerful the Masons are, but at least their rituals and their beliefs all come back to like ancient times, which is, really. Also, I wanted to bring up was, I remember NY, maybe Lux, you guys talked about the Egyptian pantheon, like those gods. And so a lot of them, they got pulled from the like Thoth is supposedly Nimrod in the Egyptian, or Osiris is. And that's why he got chopped up just like Nimrod got chopped up into 14 pieces.
Very similar story, right?
Yeah. So I wondered what your guys' take was. So that was because I haven't but my understanding was possibly a lot of these, like with the Roman and the Greek pantheons, they are really just the Babylonian pantheon, just changing up the names. Have you guys found like that Egyptian mythology is possible, almost like maybe not exactly the same, but very similar to Roman mythology? Or which mythology do you guys use in your secret societies? You know what I mean?
I definitely think when it comes to Egyptian, there's a lot of tie-overs with the Romans. Like, you could easily equate, I think, certain gods with Egyptian pantheon, for that. One interesting thing, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, you mentioned Osiris.
Yeah.
I guess comparing him to Nimrod, you mentioned?
Yeah.
It is interesting because there was a Team Osiris that showed up at fucking Skinwalker Ranch.
Really?
So maybe that's just another way of talking about Nimrod, who's big with the Mormons.
It for sure is. Even if those people in that group didn't know that, the guy at the top didn't just, I love this name. Osiris? Go with that. I love it.
Yeah, it's like, and it was like, an acronym too for like something they made up. So it's like, you could have made that something different. You didn't have to make it spell Osiris. You did that on purpose. It was an acronym. Like,
absolutely.
Same thing with their Satan machine that they got there. You couldn't have come up with a different name.
Well, and again, you would only notice if you're like us and weird, but like Osiris, he lost his penis, and that I think again, like perfectly translates to today. Like this secret cult or whatever religion worships sex, worships penises and vaginas and all this stuff, and all that we have today, like that's what our humanity has been. It's like you should have as much sex because everything else is shit, so you should bang everything and anything. And it's like just they're basically doing these like Canaanite Babylonian rituals in real time. It's just not in a temple now. It's in bars or strip clubs or OnlyFans, but it's the same thing. You're just giving your essence to whoever's there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Well, and also if you look at, let's take a look at Babylon Working with Crowley, right?
Oh yeah.
That was a basic ritual that they were trying to do, which would involve a woman, and they're impregnating this woman, and then using certain rituals, they're going to bring about this antichrist or this other entity that attaches to this fetus, and then it can be born into this world. So when we look back at the Babylonian stuff, because they're absolutely connected, you can kind of see the very early start of how they were figuring out that magic. So that's why there's such a focus on the penis and the vagina. Again, though, it does go much higher than that. It represents, the male and the feminine, but definitely on a smaller scale, that's sort of the archetype.
I think that's what Elon Musk is doing with his rockets. He's just
dude,
fucking shooting dicks up into the air.
Well, dude, and if you will, I'm not like a flatter. I'm like, I don't know where I stand, but if you believe that you can't get to outer space, it would be like, a huge occult ritual. In my mind, it seems like to shoot a, a phallic shaped object into like an impenetrable dome. I'm sure there's like some metaphor there. If you couldn't actually, you know what I mean? It would be like a good energy creator if you're not actually going anywhere.
Yeah, well, you know what? Me and Lux were talking about it like recently. We've actually mentioned it a few times that it seems like a lot of these weird people with occultism also are just into weird shit. They also got rockets, like Jack Parsons. He was into rockets.
Yeah.
All right.
Dude.
The fucking Bigelow was into, well, he was into using Elon Musk's rockets, but he was making things that are, you know, being attached or flown out with Elon Musk's rockets. You got Elon Musk. I'm sorry, he's a weirdo himself. You know, and then you got over at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, every other reason, they got shooting up fucking rockets to try to disturb shit to see if they can get responses to it. It's all these people shooting off rockets, man.
Well, dude, I've been looking for that connection forever. Because Parsons, I mean, everybody in NASA and all these groups, they're always, the CIA, they're always into the occult. What is the connection between like rockets and weapons and intelligence? And you know, as far back as John Dee and Edward Kelly or whatever, all these guys, they're all in the occult, but they're also spies. It just goes on and on and on. So, like, who's the guy that wrote the Morals and Albert Pike? He was a spy and a general in the Civil War. I mean, literally, like every powerful person that's been in intelligence has been involved in some way in like technology and space. So what is it a requirement? Like, do you have to be practicing magician or whatever to work in intelligence, or do you learn this? Is there something there that's going on that's like creating this environment where everybody's obsessed with the occult that's in these groups?
Yeah, at first I was like, I can't think it's just for phallic symbolism, but I'm sure that's included in there. You know, there's got to be something else to it. I've thought of, and that's only because I prescribe to the idea of there being a dome. I have wondered that as well. But that's, far out there, idea. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, and honestly...
Or the release of energy, for all I know. It's just a massive amount of energy coming fucking out of the bottom.
And I agree, too. There's probably some occult meaning behind them trying to push through the atmosphere with a rocket. But something that was crazy to us, we just got done researching Skinwalker Ranch, and when you look at the documents that were released with Skinwalker, there's a group of documents called the ATIP documents. Now they go into how they believe that there are these very small spheres that exist on the Earth, and they're very hard to see. A lot of them are in the air, and that these spheres are very small, but they are a wormhole, a gateway to another dimension. So we're talking like something around or smaller than the size of a golf ball that reside in the air, and they are miniature gateways to different spheres or dimensions on the tree of life. Ooh. So I think a lot of the rocket propulsion stuff is to get up there high enough to be able to check them out, or to figure out if they're there, where they are, and how to go in and out of them, because they talk about that in the ATIP documents nonstop, about transversal wormholes, all this type of crazy stuff.
Jeez, dude, that is insane. And again, like, I always say this, but they have to be getting like a response, or told, like, no one would willingly, or very few people would be like, you know what, I would love to go into this alternate universe or dimension to hang out with demons, or, that sounds like a lot of fun. That's not a bit, I'm not worried. Like, they have to have some like response that they're getting that's like, yeah, this is a great idea. We got to do this. You know what I mean? Like, there's no person on the street, if I said, hey, you should like go in that slightly open door and see what's in that house that's abandoned, people wouldn't do that. But you're telling me that scientists, the biggest dorks of all, are just like, yeah, let's go in this hole that we think might take us to a whole new place. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. That's we were trying to figure out where all the money went for Skinwalker Ranch, and they say that they're looking into little green men in spaceships, but they're not looking for the things that they describe.
Stuff you
to get the funding
didn't look like UFOs at all.
Right, they're looking at something totally different, which is what we just mentioned there. So you can see the bait and switch with the funding and the real research that they're doing.
That's an insane thought, though, isn't it? Like, to think that there's these gateways or wormholes that exist that can bring you to this demon realm, or this, I don't know if it's like this, the levels of hell or which realm you go to, but you're going somewhere, right? That's just like it's almost like unfathomable thought that that our tax dollars are funding. Lovely. So that's good. That's good.
Well, I think Elon actually said today on, and I've often wondered, with him and Bigelow, because Bigelow, I didn't know for a while, even though we were covering Bigelow. I never clicked when I was like reading his stuff that he was using Elon Musk's shit, and like he was making these outrageous claims, saying that he was building these habitats for you to be able to stay on the moon for a certain amount of time or Mars a certain amount of time. And they're going for like $52 million or something. It was like ridiculous. And he was using Elon's shit to send them out there. Fuck, I forgot where I was going with that. Fuck.
Oh, have you guys, there's this book, Isaac Weishaupt and Nick Hinton both talk about it a lot, American Cosmic. Have you guys ever read this? Ever seen this book?
No.
I haven't read it, but I've heard about it.
So yeah, I read it when I first started, so I do not recommend you going to listen to it, anyone listening. But if you can put up with horrible. But anyway, so American Cosmic, though, it's about this, she's this religious professor at, I don't know, some big university. And she starts out, I think she's trying to study like religion and different cultures. And she eventually ends up at the Vatican. And in the Vatican, she meets this guy there who works for NASA, and they call him Tyler. And I want your take on that as well after I'm done with. But so his name, they call him Tyler, and Tyler works for NASA. And the way he got working for NASA was he was extremely smart. He built all this stuff. And then one day he started like something happened to him, and he started being able to contact this entity that I forget what he called it, but he called it a name. And basically like he would communicate with this being. He would go in this room in NASA. It was this super locked room with like this one type of computer in there. And he would sit in there and he could communicate back and forth. And I mean, this guy was like a millionaire. He wasn't like an insane person. Bigelow, though, was involved in this story, I think.
Really?
And I hope Bigelow's like he's like a millionaire, right? Bigelow.
Yeah. Oh, what I was getting at earlier is that Elon Musk did say today, I think he tweeted that they now have certainly they definitely have a rocket now that can send you to the moon or Mars. That's what he said. Wow. And I'm like, how is Bigelow going to be jumping back on with that? Because he's saying he's making shit that can take you to the moon or Mars to stay in. Because he does use Elon, so I find this very interesting now.
Yeah, and just real quick, it's interesting that you bring that up about having someone in the room with a computer that is connected to some off-world entity that's giving back these thoughts, ideas, commands, whatever. Is that I would say almost about 10 months ago, NY, you and I had found that weird document called Operation or Project Chani.
Yes.
CHANI, where there were these supposed leaked transcripts of where this person who was gifted in telepathy was interacting with this computer that would then communicate to an off-world entity, and they would just talk back and forth. Now, me and NY, we put in a Freedom of Information Act for those documents.
No way.
Yeah, he did.
And it was out of something called AFCOM, so African Command. So it's like a branch of the intelligence community out of Africa. And they told me that there were no such documents, that they didn't exist. But in my honest opinion, I think when it comes to requesting documents like that, they either outright will just say no because they don't want you to get them, or they'll make it so difficult for you to get them with a certain way that you phrase it or certain punctuation. They'll just say, oh, we don't know what that is. But it definitely does tie into what you were just talking about, dude.
Dude. Well, and so the name, I was wrong. It wasn't big. Jacques Vallée. Jacques Vallée. He was involved with that story too. So have you guys read about him at all?
No.
Jacques Vallée. He's like another millionaire guy who's into UFOs and science and like NASA, and he's like a smart guy. But that I was getting him and Bigelow confused. But it's similar like type of guy, right? Like just a guy that's got too much money and he's bored. But then the biggest part was that Tyler guy. He eventually, they find like an artifact, and it's, you know, like it's all these weird things. They can't explain it, but eventually they bring up Edgar Mitchell, the NASA guy who like went insane kind of, and said that he was talking to aliens after his moon trip, which I think they're probably like demons. But this Tyler guy, he gets so scared because of like the power this being or this entity was getting over him. They meet in the Vatican library. They find like evidence that's hidden in this Vatican. You know, you need super ultra clearance. He got his clearance before the Oxford University Catholic study lady did. And but they go to like this certain section where it even like proves his case more about like these demons and aliens. But he eventually converts to Catholicism. But so basically they're saying like the point of the book is that NASA and these different people, they've got access, they are communicating with non-human entities, and whether that's a computer or whether but it's like this, you know, that's what they're talking with. And that was the one, it's like this, they believe it was a super smart computer, and that's it's, you know, not like a being like we would think. It's like this all-knowing, you know, what are those D-wave computers or D-chip computers, those ones that like run super, super fast, like I don't know. That was my little rant there was exactly how I felt when I was doing this podcast of American Cosmic. So it made 0 sense then, and it makes very little sense now. So I hope somebody learned something from what I was trying to explain.
It makes me think of like in the Stranger Things, the last season, how they hooked that chick up to like a machine. Ooh. Kind of like that bed, that floating thing, and she's got a thing on her head. I mean, they are hooking her up to a machine. You know, and they show that shit all the time with like MK Ultra type shit. You know, I think so.
There's something there, right? Like there's something that with computers and demons and NASA that they're trying to get to, because even if they can get, you know, I don't believe they've been in the moon. I don't even think any human has been in outer space.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think
they're spending so much money and energy, and just to cover money, that seems like there's a million ways they could launder money.
I think NASA's like an occult project, and they're just they're making people think it's space research.
Yes, I agree, dude. Because if you want, like they've laundered billions, if not trillions, in drugs and banks, probably crypto, another venue. Like you wouldn't need to create this huge infrastructure in NASA if you're just trying to get, you know, they get a lot of money, but not. I mean, I get like $1 billion a year. I don't know what they get, but they get a good chunk, but not like an amount that you'd be like, holy shit, what are they doing with that? You know what I mean? Like they have to have a goal as hidden, and whether it's, you know, it's hidden to the most of them, there has to be, they're trying to get somewhere, because it can't just be to launder money if they're not going to space. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, they got to be doing something.
Yeah.
It's not just like a place where the money's just getting funneled. They're actually doing something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That was what I was going for.
Yeah. Sure. And the way that they split up that funding, like we said, is that they give this broad term. Oh, we're going to research space. Well, fuck. Space could mean anything. It could mean our space, outer space. What? So they're using broad terms to get funding to look into some stuff that, you know, on the face of it seems like it's just, you know, UFOs or something, but in reality it's something way different. And I'm not going to go too hard on it because I don't have absolute proof, but I do think that they're probably using those funds for various applications way outside of just the initial research. And I think the secret societies play a vital role in taking that money, hiding it, and putting it somewhere else. And then it's just not talked about again. You know, think about how many billions of dollars go missing every year from this, you know, the Pentagon budget, stuff like that. No one ever asks anything about it. And we've just gotten used to it at this point where it's just the norm.
Yeah, dude, right? Isn't that so sickening? Like, you could raise everyone out of poverty that's in America or whatever with the money we lose each year, that, or quote unquote lose, that we misplace. Like that's impossible. They're not losing billion. Like somebody's getting it, dude. I don't know who, but somebody's getting it.
You know what I think is interesting too, real quick? I just want to bring this up because totally forgot about this as we're talking about NASA. I don't know how I didn't even think about it. Eric is saying in the chat, NASA also had Nazis in it. Now, my thing with the whole Nazi shit, I really don't know what is what, but I do know in the last 2 cases where I've seen people that have, associated with Nazis and their symbols are all occult symbolism. You know what I'm saying? So, like, when that, like, Azov or Hitler, either one of them, because of them using those symbols, I just don't know what the fuck's really going on because I already believe this is bullshit. This is magic being involved. We're only seeing what we're supposed to see. You know what I'm saying? And now thinking, like, if the Nazi itself at the higher up really is just about, or getting into occultism, those motherfuckers went over to NASA. That's even more occult people coming over.
Right.
Yeah, especially Himmler. Guys like that, the influence of Himmler and the SS. Yeah, you're absolutely right, dude.
Well,
very occult.
Jim Marrs in his book, which I totally disagree with the concept, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, where he says that Nazis are running our government, which is total BS. But regardless, he brought up the point how this, like a CBS reporter, like he was the space correspondent for CBS or NBC, and it was during like the space race, and he starts realizing that all these rockets are being shipped or being sent on occult significant days. And then he compares it with Russia, and they're doing the same thing as they got the Nazi scientists. So all they're launched with like certain, you guys know, gematria and numerological significant days and times and all this stuff. And he tries to bring this up, and he never works. He gets kicked out of reporting for NASA after that. But I found that super interesting that, again, we see this, whether it's the Nazi significance or Parsons was doing like a similar thing, but they're doing these launches, and they'll make up a lie. They'll say, oh, it's too cloudy to do it. We wanted to do it yesterday, but their whole plan was always to do it on this day. And the time, they always do it early in the morning, and they say for some weather reason, which it has no relation to weather at all. Like they have done it on cloudy days, they've done it on sunny days, they've done it on, all these things. So I found that like super wild that there's some significance to the day they're launching a rocket.
I thought about that, no lie, last night. I was watching, before I was going to bed, I just put on something to like kind of like fall asleep to, and I put on a Megadeth documentary. And they mentioned something about having like a 3-day tour on like April 8th, 9th, and 10th or something like that. And I was like, yo, isn't that like the 3 days that the Book of the Law was written?
Right.
And I'm like, I wonder if fucking bands do that. And then I started thinking about rockets. I was like, because of this whole thing with rockets lately, I was like, I should like look into like the days these rockets are being launched. And like, is there cult significance to it?
You said it was in April they did it?
Yeah, they were talking about like a 3-day tour that they did somewhere that was like April 8th, 9th, and 10th. And I think that's the same day that supposedly the Book of the Law was written with Crowley. It was 3 days, and it was, I think, April 8th, 9th, and 10th. Or 7th, 8th, and 9th, or something like that.
Well, it was crazy. So the Nazis, they called it like Angloosophy, which was just an offshoot of Theosophy. But in that Theosophy, they worship Azareth, or it's like the spring goddess, like that's one of their top gods they pray to. And so they love April. And then I was like, oh shit, well, Hitler's birthday is in April. Yeah, April so again, 20th. There's significance of this, that they picked him as their leader, probably again, because of numbers and all that stuff. So it's interesting that you mentioned April, because again, this Theosophy is like, that's a very significant month, I guess, in their little weird religion.
Yeah, it started April 8th, 9th, and 10th. When you mentioned Theosophy, Crowley did think very highly of that lady, Blavatsky. And
you do.
Crowley didn't have very, in my opinion, I don't think he was, the greatest dude when it came to women. And he was very highly spoken of her.
Yeah.
He said she was not part of the AA, But he did give her, he did kind of say that, I forgot the grade that he said he believed that she was at, but it was like up there. Like he was like, giving her props.
Well, Lux, I don't want to, I keep talking. You go. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, bud. I want to circle back around after you get done talking about something to ask. So go ahead, man.
Well, so I was just going to say that Blavatsky, that was also, she was in America for a long time, and it was after World War One. I think she was here, or maybe it was, regardless, maybe it was after the Civil War or World War One. I can't remember which, but she like single-handedly, dude, in that New York area where the Salem witch trials happened, they called it the burned over district. She brought back like this, all the rage among regular folks was like seances and magic and all this stuff like that was there, with the Salem witch trials 100 years earlier. But I found that Lincoln's wife was into trying to seance demons to talk to I think they had a deceased son. But it grew everywhere in the military because like they had these generals that were hanging out with her. And I just found that was all I wanted to say. I just found that interesting.
And Lincoln himself was in the FRC, Fraternitatis Rosicrucius, out of Pennsylvania. And they don't like to talk about that very much, but it was a Rosicrucian Masonic order that he was involved in. And even if you go to that site, okay, it's this giant plot of land in Quakerstown, PA. They have a big pyramid there. They also have the first ever Seal of Solomon that was put down on the ground of the FRC, like the actual grounds of FRC. And it's a totally very deeply occult order. And they openly claim that Lincoln was a member. So
wow, dude, I never knew that. I live right around Quakertown. I never knew there was a pyramid here.
Oh dude, go check it out.
I know.
They have a church every Sunday. It's called the Church of Illumination.
Yes, dude, it is. I'm looking at I just saw the photo when you were saying that.
Yep.
That's
Holy
awesome.
crap.
Every Sunday. Actually, that's funny that you met. We're not too far away from each other there than my friend, because that's not too far from me.
That is awesome.
Cool.
Dude, I never knew that. That's
wild.
Here, can you, I don't know how you got good you're on fruit, but what's the difference? So this was Mullins's theory, was that like the Blue Lodge of Freemasonry, that's the 3 degrees. That's like that's the general public degree, and like people that just want to become a fraternity of members or whatever. They're not like, they're doing some rituals, but not really. It's really just like your normal people cleaning up the highway or whatever. But then the Scottish Rite is where like you really could get into the down and the crazy stuff. And he puts that a lot of like the French Revolution, it only had it had the Blue Lodges. And then after the French Revolution, Scottish Rite came in. Same in like America. It was like, pre-revolution, they had like, or maybe like right after, they had a Blue Lodge. And then once they really started picking up power, then they brought the Scottish Rite. Do you guys know like what is that really, don't like the one has 33 degrees, the other just has 3? Have you read anything about like any difference between these two?
I don't know, man. To be totally honest with you, I've never really got into much of that, so that would have to be on Lux. It's really the most of Masons I have looked into actually has been with him. So, in our stuff, I never really got too deep with them.
I've definitely found that to be true. The Blue Lodge seems to be the initiatory order. These are the grades that you pass to sort of, again, the same way for myself in the Golden Dawn. This is an order that's feeling you out. They want to figure out how you work, what you believe in, what you are willing to accept or deny, and then based on that, then they pass you to the higher order, right? It's like going from like the NCAA to like the NFL or whatever. I'm not like crazy into sports, but it's like, this testing period to see if they can use you for whatever, then they pass you higher up. And of course, after that, it goes into even more selective orders. So you go from Blue Lodge, Scottish Rite, Royal Ark Masonry, Shriners, Royal Order of Jesters, just more and more concentrated orders to figure out how you might best be used.
Interesting. Because I just wanted, because that was his, like, that's what I took from his work, was that this Scottish Rite is where you really, like, that's the top, that's like, for lack of that, that's like the evil Masonry. And that's why the Scottish Rite would get put into these countries. Like another example was Italy. Mussolini kicks out Freemasonry, as did Hitler. And then immediately after Germany lost and Italy lost, you have the Scottish Rite Masonry brought into these where it did not exist. And then that's why, I mean, in Italy, for example, I'm sure you guys read about P2. And for people that don't know, P2 was this Freemasonic lodge where literally every politician was in P2 if you were powerful. And they had blackmail on you, and they were the ones laundering the drug profits and all these other things. They were just this corrupt, all of Italy was corrupt because they were in this P2 Masonic lodge, which was part of the Scottish Rite. So I just didn't know if...
One thing I did notice with us with covering Masons is that the ones where they seem to start having all these inner orders that we've dealt with, they're all pretty fucked up. We're like, we're on one of the sides, right, Lux?
What's
like,
that?
Like, you know how, like, we got into the Jesters and the Shriners and, like, Quetzalcoatl? Like, weren't those all, like, inner orders of, like, only one of the separate, like, lines that we were just talking about?
Only Scottish Rite.
Yeah, that was, like, yeah. Ooh, so that is interesting in itself, yeah.
So maybe there's some weight to that theory. I just... And then I also wanted to ask you guys, so they talk about the power of numbers and 13, how that's in they like the Canaanite religion, it's a lot of power in 13. And so that's why, like, he brings up in 1913, we have the Federal Reserve Act. We also have the Income Tax Act, which prior to that, you didn't have to report your earnings to the government. And after that, they wanted to know everything you ever had. And then also the third thing they did in 1913 was change the rules of how you get a senator elected. It used to be that, like, I guess your state legislators would pick, would give you options to vote for, or they would pick and you would vote for whatever they provided. And they changed it where you had to run yourself, which now the average cost to become a senator is $13 to $14 million to become a state senator, which significantly kills your right of getting somebody that's going to represent you, because now they have to be a millionaire to run, So that's what he said about the 13. So I didn't know if you guys had anything to elaborate on the power of numbers or 13 specifically.
I'm trying to think of the date with, like, Gematria. 1913. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that we kind of found out in doing the research for Skinwalker Ranch is that, you look at there's a very high amount of Mormons that are involved with Skinwalker Ranch. And so we kind of like went down this rabbit hole. We were like, okay, well, the Mormons, how does this tie into everything? Well, you look at the history of Joseph Smith. He was a Mason as well. And when you kind of narrow down this timeline it seems like there was this giant boom of secret societies, different orders, the Moose Lodge, the Elk Lodge, the Jesters, Order of Quetzalcoatl. What's interesting about when all these new orders pop up is right around that same timeline that you just talked about.
Yeah, I think Quetzalcoatl was like maybe 1917, something close. Yeah, it's like within the same 10 years that you're in there, you get so many different inner orders or things popping up.
And the reason being is because during that time, there was a high, there was this new political order that was kind of coming to the rise in the United States. And it was the anti-Masonic order, or the anti-Masonic party. And what they were trying to do was to keep Masonry out of politics. And so in our opinion, what we were kind of thinking is maybe because there was the new rise of this anti-Masonic party, what they had to do was they didn't want to be called Masons anymore. They wanted to call themselves anything else besides Masons. But
Interesting.
to create new orders, create new religions that were vastly different, but exactly at the heart of them all. But just a way to distance themselves from, the free accepted Masonic bodies to create something new. That way they didn't have to have the same label as Masons.
I like that theory, dude. I think that sounds totally reasonable, because you're right. Like in Pennsylvania, my home state, they actually elected an anti-Masonic, I think, governor, but that was as far as they got. But everyone hated him because they killed that one guy for writing the book about him. I forget his name, and they killed him. The Masons did, for talking. And then the big thing, like they would run on the platform of like, how can these people be loyal to us? They're loyal to only their brothers, so we can't have them in power, and which obviously makes sense. So that totally seems reasonable to me, that you just create a bigger net and change up the names. You even get more people this way and more cover.
Exactly, dude. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. It's, the Masons, I feel like we're like 20 years late or 30 years late, because I always talk about the Masons. What do you think? Where do they? I think I asked NY this on the show we did, but where do you think what happened to them? Where do they go now? Like these people that were leading these groups and pulling these strings, I don't think they're in Masonry. Maybe they are, but so few. No one in our generation besides Micah Dank is a Freemason. But seriously, you know what I mean? There's nobody does Masonry. So where are they hiding now? What group are they utilizing to provide, or do they not even need cover anymore?
That's, I've often wondered about that, because I'll be totally honest with you, I never thought that they were all that much to worry about until we started covering them on our show, and I was like, holy fuck. I always assumed all these other occult orders and things were probably worse, and then I was like, fuck, these dudes are pretty fucked up themselves. So, but a lot of the stuff we covered also was a while ago. So, I don't know, if they're still doing the same things they were doing then, I would assume they have a hand in something, but I don't, to know what extent. Yeah. But I definitely think, stuff that we've even seen recently, when we showed the Order of Quetzalcoatl, I do think that they were partially involved with the QAnon PSYOP. So, if that's true, then that does show the Masons, in my opinion, actually pretty fucking influential the last few years.
That's fair. Yeah. I remember you guys did all that work on that, and you were tying those two together. So,
yeah. So I don't know what to really,
if I had to,
at least in that sense, I think they might be pretty, whatever, powerful, but other areas, I don't know.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I think that they've learned from the past, and they knew that they had to make smaller inner orders, and that way it's like a crime syndicate. You can have these two, you have the Blue Lodge, you can have the Scottish Rites, you can have the Jesters, you can have the Order of Quetzalcoatl, or the Shriners, and so each one of those different orders is in charge of a certain thing. That way, if one goes down, the rest do not, because they can just point the finger at this one order, even though they're all absolutely connected. And at this point, I think that they have gotten it down to such a perfect system that they have inner orders that you and I will never know about. And so for most Masons who were in the Blue Lodge, they're going to think, whoa, if they're listening to this podcast, they're going to think, that's crazy. I've never seen anything like that. But I'm telling you, I was in the Golden Dawn, and we were doing initiations and rituals inside of Blue Lodges.
I remember you said that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the Masons there never knew that was happening. There's a specific reason why we went there on certain nights, so that the members of the Blue Lodge wouldn't see that we were going in there to do rituals.
That's insane. I remember when we did the show, you told me that, and that's still hard to understand. That's just crazy.
You even going back to even how you're talking about separating each other, or how they're still tied together. Even this I thought was weird, and I was like, is this a cover or what? But like when we start talking about like the Shriners and the Jesters in Quetzalcoatl, I mean, you have the Shriners who have like that hospital and the Children's Hospital, right? They're big with that. Quetzalcoatl offers transportation and literally has fucking vans that look like Shriner Hospital transport vans for kids. And it's like, yo, what the fuck's really going on? So I even wondered, like, are they even dealing with human trafficking in a sense, too? And that van is just to covering people. Normal person just thinks, oh, okay, it's just a kid getting transported to the hospital. The same thing is like if you saw an ambulance go down the street, really. You would just think it's, it's just doing its job. You're not thinking, you're taking it for what it looks like.
And that's a totally reasonable connection, dude. For anybody that would struggle with that, the CI, these same groups, they you can easily prove they've sold drugs, which is a $100 billion a year industry. They've given drugs they've ruined communities, they've poisoned populations with the drugs. So to think like, oh no, they wouldn't mess with kids is literal like insanity, dude. Because that's another industry in the hundreds of billions. So to think that the CIA say, I'll do drugs, but I'm not gonna sell kids is, an idiotic statement, because that's definitely not true.
Yeah, and they've been caught over and over again doing crazy stuff like that. And if I'm like thinking of a timeline backwards, right? Like, why would you even pick the name Order of Quetzalcoatl? If you look at the Aztecs and the Mayans, they were using this deity, Quetzalcoatl, and they were sacrificing children to this entity, right? Now it goes let's take a step further back. Okay, so the Phoenicians doing the same thing. Those at Babylon, they were doing the same thing. So it's almost like it brings it all back to what you were talking about with the Canaanites, because this is a long-lived legacy of deep, crazy, dark occult shit that they just want to pass through the timeline and hide it under a new name.
We're in the same wavelength, dude. Because I was gonna say, what a perfect way to round back. We were talking, but like the Mayans and all these groups, they were doing these hard. They clearly communicate. Before Columbus, there was communication. You can prove that in so many ways. The one castle in Ireland or Scotland who started the Templar, helped the Templars. I forget the St. Clairs. They had corn drawn on their castle, which we didn't come to America yet, so there's no way they could know that corn existed. But all these things. But that was the connection I made too, is that the Canaanite religion spread, and through the Phoenicians, through the New World, and like you said, they changed these names. But these ceremonies are exactly the same. They revolve around sacrifice, blood, gruesome stuff. And again, to think that all these separate cultures around the world said, ooh, this is a good idea. We should slaughter these people and cut out their beating heart and eat it. Yeah, that's a good religion. Like, there's no way this by chance, all these different communities before Christianity came there, and even after, we're doing these horrid things, these horrible, unspeakable evil things to please a god, unless it was the same religion. That's what the point I was getting at.
Yep.
It's different, yeah.
Different name for the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a lot of that. I mean, sometimes that's what I think a lot of it's when you get to comparing pantheons, except for maybe specifics that might be just to tell you a different tale or just in a different way. I think they're both kind of representing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, even like Mercury, there's Mercury. He's a Roman deity. They painted him on the one first like big church meeting, like the 300s or 400s. I forget what it was called. But the painting that represented that meeting, they have Mercury overwatching the procession.
Right.
Why would the Catholic Church say, yeah, let's have a pagan god that represent this? The Council of Nicaea, that's what it was. And that's what they use Mercury as as watching over everyone. And he's taken like from Marduk in Babylonian religion. So it's something that you can show this. It connects to each group of people, maybe by a different name, but the same concept, that the same belief system or whatever their powers were or whatever.
Well, you know, it's funny. We're even talking about like a little bit before about people coming over here, you know, earlier before Columbus. Even if you go into Mormonism, they even say that people came here before fucking Columbus, according to them. You know,
Ooh, that's
Jerusalem.
powerful.
They had all those tribes left Israel, and they say that they think that there was at least 2 of them that came over here, Lamanites and the Nephites.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's prior to fucking, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's prior to Columbus.
Yeah. Yes.
So.
And so isn't that interesting? Our theory, Mormonism is an offshoot of Freemasonry. They're worshiping, this Babylonian religion or whatever. They even believe that someone before Columbus came. That's like normally for a long time, that would be a conspiracy theory or whatever. So it's interesting that their religion believes that, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. Yeah. That would be very conspiratorial. And that was an idea 100 years ago or more, really.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And also, just to go back real quick to what you were talking about with the Council of Nicaea, that council radically changed the Bible that we know now.
Ooh,
radically changed the Bible that we know now. So, if you were to compare the Bible prior to the Council of Nicaea, it probably told a different message than, like Romans, for example. Romans is not in the original biblical texts.
I didn't know
this
that.
was something that was implemented by the Romans after the Council of Nicaea, because it told you to obey the government. It told you to obey the authorities, and they are blessed by God. But this was not an original idea in Christianity. The reason why the Romans even implemented the Council of Nicaea was because the Christians were getting too radicalized in their view, so they wanted to kind of cull the herd, keep them under control. So they took a bunch of Christian leaders at the time, they stuffed them in a room for like 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
They forced them by sword to totally change the Bible in order for it to have a message that would be more palatable for Romans, and then to change the face of what Christianity was believing in. So it's crazy to see how, like, even back then, these groups were doing the best that they could to try and make changes to anything that would fit their agenda.
And just to add, the Mercury, he's the trickster god. So it's just fitting that's the trickster god is the one that you would have overlooking this, historic event. Like, if you're not trying to send a message there, I don't know, like that. No, you're sending them right. Like, you are sending a message by painting the god, and it was commissioned by the Pope or by the Catholic Church, this painting, and they know that Mercury is overseeing the god of trickery. Like, come on, dude. Clearly something's going on here that is like a wink and a nod to those in the know.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I mean, that's even another good example you were mentioning before about gods connecting to Egyptian. I never used Toth, Tahuti, whatever people want to call him, for his trickster's aspect, but I mean, that is kind of a small aspect of him that you can use him for. So, and he does fall on the same sphere that Mercury would on the Kabbalah. So, like, they are supposed to be associated with each other. Yeah.
What do you mean the same sphere?
Like where Mercury, the planet itself, would fall on Hod. Toth would go along with the Egyptian god instead of Mercury. Because Mercury is also the planet named after a god. The god Mercury itself would go along with that sphere. Toth would be like the Egyptian equivalent to it.
Interesting. Dude.
Well, at least going by Crowley's book 777, that's, Mercury and Toth would be on both. Going through his graphs as gods associated with that sphere, they would be listed next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that just adds to our theory that they're all the same.
Oh yeah, actually, that's a really good. Yeah, if 777, it lists everything and it shows how everything's associated with everything. Actually, it's like a graph. So yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah, that's actually a perfect way to show like they do really associate a lot. I think certain ones. I think he'll have Egyptian deities in the gods, Christian, or like Catholic. Like I know Jesus is in there and stuff, and Buddhism, maybe Hinduism, Greek, maybe. There's a couple. He's got a bunch in there that are kind of important.
Dude, well, I never read those because I've tried to read. I think not Pikes, but the other guy. Who's the other guy that wrote the big Freemasonry book? Oh, come on! He has the cool painting of like the dome.
Pike?
Who is it?
Albert Pike?
Not Albert Pike. The other one.
Oh fuck! What's his?
The dome.
He's got the painting with like the globe, like the stars.
Oh, dude, I know exactly who you're talking about.
What the hell, dude? I can't think of
Manly
it.
It's
P.
not Da
Hole?
Vinci, is it?
No, he's like a
Manly P. Hole?
yes, Manly P. Hall. Thank you. And now all that thinking, I've lost my train of thought. But
He had a globe in the dome or something.
yeah, he had that. It's a cool painting, but dude, now I don't even know. I don't even know what I was going
It's
with.
all right.
I don't even know what I was going with. Holy crap. I was so focused on Manly P. Hall. Oh, now I got it. But all those books, they're so, and they write. You've read Crowley's work, and
So yeah, I mean enough of it.
have you read any of Manly Hall's stuff or Albert Pike's stuff, or no?
Yeah, before I got into magic and just like kind of like getting into like Freemasonry or like into conspiracy theories and all that stuff with secret societies, I did read them, and I will say they probably were almost as confusing as Crowley the first time reading it.
Well, and I think they write them like that so we can't I have tried reading some of their stuff, and it's like, dude, I either am hallucinating while I'm reading this or I need to be, because I can't understand a goddamn thing, dude. They're all over the place.
Well, that's how I think they say a lot in code with weird shit. Stuff, it sounds weird or it sounds out there, but I think like when you start taking occult archetypes and ideas, you can start like reading the underlying message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're challenging. They're challenging.
Yeah.
It's always hidden under a layer of something that only those who have the decoding methods can really read for what it actually is. For the rest of us, it sounds totally ridiculous.
Right.
But for those who have the little decoding glass, they can see it,
I even think like depending on how like kind of like far progressed you are in magic, like Lux was saying with like layers of stuff, I even think the meanings start having like deeper and deeper layers because you're understanding more, and sometimes it even makes the shit make more sense. The farther you get into magic, you'll start to be like, oh, now I know why that weird shit makes fucking sense now.
Mm-hmm. Well, dude, and just like that hidden stuff, like I'm not Catholic. There's a Catholic church right by me, and I saw the other day, it was like, on their little boards with the letters about the Queen of Heaven and Mary. And I talked about this in my like Jesuit show, but the Queen of Heaven, that was Semiramis, or however you say it, Semiramis, who was Nimrod's wife. And in the Bible, they never give Mary the title Queen of Heaven. And in Jeremiah, it explains how he says that you should not say the queen, you should not mention the queen, like use that phrase. And he says it 5 times. And the 5 is, oh wait, I have it right. I pulled up my notes. But and then like Venus, or, whatever, Venus is the queen of, that's like the Queen of Heaven. That's Semiramis's other name. And she goes through, like, she has 5 rotations before you can see her or something like that. Or it's just, what I'm saying is like all the, like, and Catholic Church slowly started putting this title on Mary, even though when it says not to do that in the Bible. So it's Ishtar was the Queen of Heaven in the Babylonian. And so it's just weird how, again, they hide this, like how much stuff is actually hidden for like a wink and a nod, even in like the Catholic Church or things like that, where they're secretly putting in this pagan god worship under our noses type of deal.
Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah, especially since they have to do it 5 times. That reminds me of Gabora.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And which could go with like so many things. I mean, that sphere a lot of times is like associated like to an extreme with war, but it also chaos, and that doesn't mean it has to be war. Chaos is just changing something from what it used to be to something different. Me spilling my cup right here, that'd be chaos because now the iced tea isn't in the cup anymore. Now it's just on the table. Or when my cat gets off of my leg, that's chaos because she's no longer on my leg anymore. She's on the floor. So it could even go with thinking. Just a change in thinking or change in reality, your own perception. You can get into shit like that. Doesn't even have to be of the physical world.
And just to correct what, so the Venus, the queen of heaven, that was the god Venus. Its rotation in the sky, it creates a freaking pentagram. So it creates a 5-pointed pentagram in the outer space, and they mapped this. In ancient times or whatever, it went 5 times and made a star, and that's why one of the theories. This was a different book, but he says that's why the pentagram is the symbol of this perversion, Nimrod and Ishtar and all these people, because this 5-pointed star, their queen of heaven in the sky, makes the star.
Yeah, the pentagram is associated with Gabora too as a symbol.
With what?
Yeah,
with Gabora, the same sphere I was talking about before with chaos and change.
Oh,
the pentagram, the fifth sphere, the pentagram is a symbol for that as well.
Yeah, and if you're drawing the pentagram on the tree of life, it would be the first starting point from the top of the tree of life, and the ending standpoint for a 5-pointed star if you were to invert it. So,
damn, dude, and that inversion, that was in everyone's heard this, how the DC is laid out in the pentagram, and the bottom of the pentagram, it's either the White House or Congress. I can't remember which, and then of course Congress, when they made it, that address is 666. Like there's something so evil and perverse among these people that have created our worlds that it's just ignored unless you realize, you take a second to look deeper into it. But I found, it was made by Lafont, James Lafont, who also sounds like James Alefantis from the whole pizza fence thing, who was in DC. Like they love like these patterns and these little winks and nods. I don't know if they do it for like power reasons or for like, dude, look what I just got, what I just did, like that was awesome,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's like even NY and I were talking about the other day. So I went to see the new Jurassic Park movie, right? And one of the co-producers for that movie is a guy with the last name Crowley. And then, there's a lot of occult stuff that's in that movie, but it's like, again, a wink and a nod when you compare the two, when they're showing occult stuff in the movie, and then this co-producer goes by the name of Crowley. I mean, there's a lot of like Scarlet Horror symbology in that movie.
Yeah.
And Y pointed out earlier, there's a reference to the Quetzalcoatl. So it's just a lot of winks and nods over and over again.
Well, dude, and so the Jesuits, the Jesuits, and they got their stuff from like the secret side that, Ignatius Loyola, he was worshipped the Queen of Heaven, again, Venus, not Mary, the Black Madonna statue, but they were the ones behind the plays that started in Europe in the 1500s. And the one quote from the one Jesuit was, these they would go to Protestant Germany, where the town was ran by the Protestant prince or whatever. And after they did this play that has all this symbolism and it's all hidden, same with Shakespeare, Francis Bacon was a rose, all these things. And the quote was, one of our plays, the 10 princes or whatever, they converted to Catholicism after, and it was more efficient doing this than making someone to sit through 100 sermons. So the movies are so powerful, and you guys know all about, way more than I do with occult symbolism in movies, but I just found that amazing that even in the 1500s, when plays just started, they're using symbolism hidden under a comedy or whatever to try and morph the public and shape the public into a way that they wanted,
I even think Shakespeare was involved in doing that.
Or
whoever wrote that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, there's like theories that it was Francis Bacon wrote a lot of the Shakespeare and he was a Rosicrucian. But all Shakespeare has all this symbolism in it as well. Tons of, the pagan, it's just all, and I don't know many Shakespeare, so I can't give an example, but there's tons of symbolism in all of his stories or whatever plays.
Well, you know what's funny is that we actually, real quick, I do want to mention this, and then I'll get back to Shakespeare. Real quick, Stranger Things, I thought was interesting just to mention because you were talking about this guy, producing or whatever. There's two episodes in the 4th season are directed by an Hungarian director named Nimrod Antal.
No way, dude.
So, let's toss that in there too. Just
who names their kid Nimrod? Who names their kid Nimrod?
I don't know.
Who? I want to meet the parents. The name. I mean, come on, dude. Or he probably changed his name.
Who names their kids Nimrod?
But who does, dude? Who says, the most evil king that's ever existed in the Bible? I'm going to name
that's
my son.
Probably, and the thing is, too, is that, I've even had some people, say, I mean, I've had Masons tell me this, and I'm pretty sure other people have heard it, that sometimes, you take on a stage name. So that could just be, not his real name, or he could have changed it legally. Yeah.
But still, again, you chose the most evil guy who's doing sacrifices and orgies as your stage name. Yeah. Dude, again, don't tell you heard it and you liked it. What? No, dude, you definitely knew. If you Googled Nimrod, in 2 seconds you would find out what your name you're picking means. I'm not gonna take I didn't pick my podcast name Adolf Allen, right? So I wouldn't pick Nimrod as well. He's also on the list.
But that's a for the Adolf stuff, that's what everyone sort of knows and would immediately have a knee-jerk reaction to. But when it's separated by thousands of years and you name your kid Nimrod or call yourself Nimrod, it's not as impactful or shocking to the general public because it's information that's lost, and the people aren't going to go and look up what Nimrod means. And second point, for the magical order that I was in, at least, we had to pick a magical name. I know that sounds really goofy and ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. And again, it's a way for you to name yourself in a new magical sense. You're supposed to let go of your old name and take hold of this new name. So I think some of that stuff, when we see these weird, Crowley or Nimrod, names like that pop up, they very well could be magical aliases,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, even in the OTO, when I did confirmation, you can give yourself a different name if you want to.
That's why
you'd be recognized by a name that you made up.
It's like confirmation names. So that totally makes sense, again, because it's just a perversion, right? So totally makes sense that the perversion has similar rituals or whatever traditions that the church does as well.
Yeah. And what I was going to get back to with Shakespeare, we did have this done before Skinwalker Ranch, and then we ended up putting out our Skinwalker Ranch to kind of time with it, the 3rd season dropping. We actually put ours out the day after the 3rd season started. So we ended up taking a series. It was only a 2-part series, but we did actually get into some Shakespeare shit and occultism in it, and some of the people that are involved with having some sort of word, point of view to listen to, the type of people that they really are. It's actually fucking pretty wild. And even I think we ended up kind of tying back to schools that are even pushing fucked up ideologies.
Well, dude, yeah.
It's pretty wild.
That whole enlightenment of, or the schools all come from, again, Jesuit. That's Jesuit universities spread all over Europe. They pick the education. And our schools today, though the Jesuits still aren't as powerful, we still go by the way they created schooling, which was used to create that collective, the humanism and stuff, that your rights are given by government, not by God, and all these things that were just a slow step-by-step process to bring us to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of that book that we got, Lux? You remember that? I can't fucking remember.
It was the second volume of essays on Shakespeare by, I think it was.
I think did Prentice Hall put that out?
Yeah, it was Prentice Hall. Yeah.
And there was the reason that it even caught Lux's attention when he found it is because there was like a chapter in there where they were looking at it in an occult aspect, calling it escaping the Matrix, and he was like, "Oh, we gotta check this out." And it was weird. Cool. And then the people that are associated with that book that was being used at a school and shit. If you start looking into the other people that had like opinions on stuff about Shakespeare in there, they did not match the schools that they went to. When you see what else they're into and what else they publish, they come from the supposedly Catholic or Christian looking college or university in these exchange programs. But then you're fucking talking about Marxism and fucking LGBTQ, fucking all that other crap. It's like, or you're feminists. It's like, wait, how does this match the university you just went to? How did you come out like that?
Well, dude, isn't it crazy how Marx was also, he was like tied to the Jesuits as well. And it's just all of our history. It's like almost enough to like make you super upset when you think about like how all of our history has possibly been like a ritual. Like Pike, he talked about how this was after the Civil War. He said the world, to institute this Masonic world that we want, we will need to have 3 world wars. 1 to set up communism. So he got that part right. 1 to create a communist superpower. He got that partially right. And then a 3rd one to knock out Christianity and everything else. And that's how they bring their hell on earth, their utopia that they're creating. And I just found that fascinating that this guy guessed this in 1886. So tell me how he just got lucky with his guesses, 40 years before these wars started.
Right.
Wild, dude. I mean, that's insane to guess that and be right, because that's literally what happened.
Yeah.
I even see
it is.
I even think the whole Christianity thing, or at least belief in God, I think is starting to lose its oomph, in a sense, or I think they've
they're being
misled astray,
The church, the churches they pick and choose. There's a nice quote from some father, saint, but he's like, once you start picking and choose the verses that you follow in the Bible, you're not listening to God and you're listening to yourself. And that's what they're essentially are telling people to do at these, all these woke churches. That's literally like they just say, oh, we'll ignore this part, but focus on this. That's so they've been able to corrupt that as well. Easily.
Yeah, me and Lux were talking about that, kind of something like that today, and I had even said, and he's like, I think it's quite obvious. So I think QAnon, in my opinion, was really good at fucking up Christians and making them toss Jesus to the curb and fucking worshiping Trump.
Yeah, dude.
I've actually really, you see all these like they're proud to be like these Christian like Trumpers or whatever, and it's like, yo, do you not realize this guy is like your fucking idol? I've seen some people call him daddy, or I'm like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Emperor Trump, things like that. Yeah, this guy never proclaimed to be a Christian before he ran for office. And now suddenly, he's talking about, it was like a famous quote. They asked him, what's your favorite verse in the Bible? And he said, all of it. I can't name one. Get at, this guy is not our hero. He's not our savior. He's not someone to even be looked up to. Sorry for all those who might be listening who really like Trump, but this is not a good man and not something that we need to,
both sides
idolize.
Suck.
Dude.
Yeah, for sure.
Calling him dad. That's the daddy thing. There was this guy in the Bolshevik Revolution, and after he was a Roth art kid, leader, and he had more power than Lenin and Stalin. They couldn't touch him. He was in charge of the banking part, and they called him daddy. But that perversion of how that has now become sexual. It's a perfect example of literally just perverting our world. If I heard someone say daddy, I would, that's their brainwash. And my mind immediately goes to this disgusting level, because how they're corrupting everything that was once pure.
Yep.
Yes.
And then now we're gonna like sort of hang on, a hope and a wish for the majority of people who are Republicans or conservatives. Instead of finding real solutions for ourselves, we're looking for another daddy. Right? We're looking for Daddy Trump to come back. We're gonna get those votes in, and instead of trying to find real resources and a way out of this whole shithole that we know that we're in right now, because it's at a all-time worst. So we're just more worried about having someone come back in than creating real change for ourselves.
That's so key, dude. That's so key.
And you know what I think is really important to even think about that whole shit? When it comes like to mentally, if you look at it, and I'm not trying to like fucking shit on like QAnon people or whatever, but for them to play the mental gymnastics they have to do in order to fucking make sense of the shit they want to keep telling themselves and keep on changing the goalposts and keep on changing dates, that is no fucking different than the mental gymnastics the far left has to fucking do to keep on believing the bullshit they're reading.
Another good point.
So, I mean, it's just as fucking sad on both sides. They're both fucking manipulated.
And I don't think like that movement, I think it's pretty much left with like mentally deranged people or very confused people, but still like that concept of like somebody saving us.
Yes, yeah.
That's what it is, dude. Like nobody wants to say, all right, well, I can't control that. I can control me. What can I do to change the plate, to make this world I want to see? They all just want to vote somebody in, which costs zero effort, and put their relying on them. And that's another like psyop or brainwashing that you just want someone to come save you. That is no different than the left and the welfare state, or I deserve this because of my skin color, as the right saying, oh, this is horrible. Who's going to help me? Who's going to stop this? It's the same concept.
Right, because the agenda on both sides is to give up your independence and to give it to someone else. And then they're going to be the ones that fix everything while you sit back. You don't have to worry about much. And your one vote counts for the duration of a presidency, to just sort of sit back, relax, and not have to worry about things just because you put in a vote. And in my opinion, I think that's ultimately what this beast system wants, is for you to just vote, forget about it. I mean, hell, just not even watch much of the politics that's going on between those 4 years. And then at the end of the 4 years, well, you just hear the new politics, and then you just cast another vote. Whereas it's so much more difficult. It's so much more responsibility for you to, instead of just voting someone in, to create changes within your own community, within your own environment, to make the shit actually happen that you want to see. But they keep us distracted with just this big play, the grand scheme of things, to keep you distracted from how you can impact things, and just put it off onto someone else to, fix everything for you.
Dude, and that's like our society, dude. It's just, waiting. And another thing they taught, school, which was great. You know how horrible the education system was. But what did they teach kids in school? Did they say prior to mandatory education America had a higher literacy rate than we do now in the not amongst slaves, but among citizens of America in the 1700s and after post-Revolutionary War and their literacy rate among non-slaves was 99 to 100%. And now it's like, I think we're at like 82, or maybe it was like 97, but we're like 82 or 84. And so what do they teach you in school? You raise your hand, you listen to the teacher, the expert, you wait to be told what to do. That's what made America so amazing and made them a superpower, because they didn't wait for it. They didn't wait for a king to tell them what to do. They didn't wait for their, duke or whatever to tell. They just went and did it. They had a problem, they solved it, and that's what made us such a force to be reckoned with. And now there is no ingenuity, because we're told not to be. You're told that's a good person if you raise your hand to use a bathroom. You know, the only lie you lie is you're lying to get out of your seat as a little kid to just get a break and stand up. Like it's beyond broken. It's made that way to be broken.
Yeah. Yep. Very good point, Jack. Yeah, I didn't even think of that with the schooling and stuff to that effect.
Well, dude, you sit in line, you wait for a bell before that was Rockefeller invention because everyone worked in factories then for the bell. I mean, it's on and on and on. Like the great book is John Taylor Gatto, and he wrote all about the education system and the history of the education system and how people in Massachusetts, they stood up against the mandatory schooling, and they were military people with guns forced their kids into schooling. But you only need like 100 hours. If you're like a young 12-year-old and you want to learn how to read, it would take you about 100 hours to learn how to read at a highly proficient level. So 100 hours is what, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks of studying or whatever. So what, and same with math and like all these things. So why do you have kids go to school for 18 years? If the goal was to teach them how to read, you could easily do that in 2 years, and easily. So, and then why do you require them to go for 18 years if it's not to brainwash them and create the society of people that you want to live in, you know?
Damn. Exactly. Yeah, and that's the power structure, is that, you know, they want to indoctrinate certain things through the school system and not teach others. So that's why there's so much more of a focus on the proficiency of, LGBT rights more than there is a hardcore focus on mathematics, English, and other things. So that when you do that, you've created a generation of people who are more focused and passionate about their emotions than logic, who are more focused on your opinion and how it fits into this societal norm where there's a bunch of people who are underserved and underprivileged. And I'm not saying there aren't people that are. I'm not doing that broad blanket. I'm just saying that overall, they want this brainwashing to cover everything. So we get in this hyper emotional state and not focus on logic and reason. And that's why you see so much of this crazy agenda being able to, be pushed through. What is a woman? It was like one of the highest trending documentaries over the last, 6 months?
That is a great point.
So we're more focused on what is a woman than what's 2 + 2. It's nuts. And then you influence everyone who is already in that mindset and brainwashing with an endless amount of distractions on social media, Facebook, Instagram, fucking Twitter, YouTube. You keep everyone distracted from everything else. You feed the agenda, and it just creates a generation of automatons.
Dude, well, that was Gatto's other point, was you're in school for all these time, and in the 50s, America's golden age or whatever, you had moms at home, so you could get this education at home, real life stuff that you can actually use from your mom that's at home. TVs weren't, you had the TV in the living room, you're all around it. And now, fast forward 30 years, you have moms go back to work. So now the kid comes home and goes to either after school program, more brainwashing, or he comes home and sits in front of the TV, which is brainwashing from even more powerful propagandist. And then you like, he did this math, like, dude, you have like in 2020, you have like 4 hours a week, after dinner and all this stuff and extracurriculars of spending just time with your mom and dad, teaching you whatever, like 4 hours a week. And dude, I learned nothing in school. Like, I was in a nursing major for 3.5 years, and I was doing heroin and passing fine. So the point, like, I learned literally nothing, but until after I got kicked out and started doing this stuff. Like, I couldn't understand timelines, like, Revolutionary War. And I think, again, they teach you this in the most boring, monotonous way. And then once you get excited, you switch to math class. They do this so you don't learn anything. So you come out, you're kind of like a blank slate, ready to be programmed in the secondary education, whatever they want to do out there.
Damn. Right. Just a very quick story I'll tell that's talking exactly to your point is So I was a teacher for a number of years.
No way.
I taught a couple different subjects. I taught environmental science, a bunch of stuff, right? But anyway, so there was this one student that I had. Now, he had come from the worst parts of Washington, D.C. And he had come to this program that I was teaching at where it was this 5-day long program where it was trying to integrate like kids to nature, like get them connected.
Okay.
And so this kid all week, right, had been like really telling me all about these crazy rappers that he knew. He could name every song. He could name all the lyrics to all these songs. And one night we were out really late and we were outside of like this cabin because that's where all the kids stayed. And he looked up at the sky and he said, "What are those?" And I was like, what do you mean, what are those? He was like, those things. And I realized that he was talking about stars.
Jeez, dude.
I was like, what? And he really didn't understand that there were these things called stars because, you know, he's living in a city where all of that's drowned out because of the ambient light. He's never seen them. And it was a stark realization for me. It's always stuck with me because it was just incredible to see how, you know, this indoctrination can work so well that kids don't even know what stars are, you know?
Dude, and yeah, some people might struggle to believe that. My mom was a teacher in like a real rural area, and they talked like the standardized testing is. They like had a question like Sally goes to the beach, and a lot of her kids, they never left this rural area. They didn't know, they couldn't understand they had no idea what a beach was. They didn't know. So that story that you told, it's not like literally if these kids don't have parents or whatever, they won't know simple things that we should all, you know, easily recognize or understand.
Yeah. It's something our school system should have certainly been able to explain to them, like, what are stars?
There's more important things, Lux. There's social issues. So we got to fight this ever-present racism that's in every aspect, under every corner, under every bed. It's there. And we're going to find it. And we're going to stop it.
That was good. Sounds about right. Yeah. That's all that matters now.
That's all that matters, dude. All that matters.
Maybe we'll. You guys all right with wrapping it up now?
Yeah, dude. It's almost my bedtime, so perfect.
Right? Yeah, nice, good.
Yes, sir.
Yo, I had a really good time, Jack. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
on,
dude.
That was fucking awesome.
You guys.
Yeah, that was a great fucking episode. I had a good time just bullshitting.
Yeah,
we covered a lot of interesting stuff as well. Like I think there was a lot of good things we brought up. So.
Dude, we're good now. We've known each other almost. I don't like 2 years. I feel like.
Yeah, probably going on 2 years.
Almost,
soon, right?
yeah.
Dude, so we got that energy or camaraderie, or something. I don't know.
That's wild.
I do gotta tell you though,
another couple
Jack,
more
you
years.
You gotta upgrade to the string. You gotta upgrade to the string tank top.
I know. I got a few of them, dude. I got a few of them. Maybe I'll start breaking them out.
Nice.
When I go look at that pyramid in Quakertown, I'm gonna wear one. I read on the website though, it says you cannot go look at it. You'll get charged with trespassing. So we'll have to figure out how I can take a look at it.
You got a drone?
Well, bro, it doesn't sound like we're too far away, so maybe we can go up there and do an adventure together.
Heck yeah, dude! Cool. That sounds great.
Fuck, that would be awesome. I'm actually, well, I mean, it wouldn't probably only take me like 2 or 3 hours to get there. So I mean, that would be interesting for me. Yeah. Nice. That could be interesting. Jack, I think all of your links are in the bottom, but you want to let everybody know, like,
yeah, dude. Find you as well? I got a show tomorrow. If you guys, I'm finishing my Canaanite series with the World Wars and communism and the revolution. But you can at Kojak Podcast on social media and my YouTube, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence, and you can find me all there. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Definitely, man. Definitely, yeah. And his links I'm pretty sure are already in the bottom of the live right now. And the links to the Occult Rejects and everything else is in the bottom as well. Thank you, everybody who jumped in. We actually had, I think this might have been a record high for our lives. I think we had 23 at one point. So
nice, dude.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. So thank you, everybody who jumped in. I see, Bad Guy, Jonah, Tritonic, Raven, Eric, all Teresa. There's a lot of people that are the constants. You're awesome. Thank you for all coming and checking out this live. This is our first monthly live. Hopefully we'll keep it going. And thank you again, Jack, for coming on. I had a great fucking time. And I guess that's the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.